Freud warned that nothing destroys love faster than when desire is smothered by care. What most women call devotion, he would call castration. At first glance, this sounds impossible. How can devotion, the very thing women are praised for, secretly dismantle the bond between two people? Why would giving more love, more effort, more sacrifice lead not to closeness, but to distance? Here lies a forbidden truth that no one wants to speak. Sometimes what looks like love is actually the beginning of desire's death. Sometimes the very habits women were taught to be proud of are the same habits that quietly erase attraction, ruin respect, and turn a man into something he was never meant to be. Think of this: if you constantly anticipate his needs before he feels them, if you soften every edge of his life, if you make yourself endlessly available, what role do you truly play in his story? You may believe you are being the perfect partner, but in his unconscious you are becoming something far more dangerous, not a lover, but a mother. And here is the danger Freud hinted at. When a woman takes on the role of caretaker too fully, she doesn't preserve love, she rewires it. She shifts the polarity that fuels desire, and in doing so, she quietly destroys the very man she longs to keep. But why? Why would care, attention, and devotion carry such hidden risk? And how can a woman know when she has crossed the invisible line, the line between being cherished and being taken for granted? Today, we will expose that line. We will uncover 6 things a spiritually awake woman never does for a man. 6 hidden mistakes that smother his masculinity, drain his desire, and leave her wondering why love feels like slow collapse. If you stay with me, you will see the map Freud left behind, how unconscious patterns shape relationships, how love turns to resentment, and how women can stop repeating a cycle that has stolen their power for centuries. Because here is the most dangerous secret of all. A woman does not lose love by refusing to give everything. She only loses it when she gives too much, too soon, too completely. Freud warned that love and desire are not the same. Love can survive on care, but desire cannot. Desire demands tension, polarity, distance. It is born in the spark between opposites, not in the collapse into sameness. And here lies the tragedy. Most women, taught since childhood to prove love through sacrifice, confuse devotion with desire. They erase the very distance that keeps attraction alive. They give before being asked. They solve problems that are not theirs. They soften every edge until no spark remains. And then they wonder why passion fades, why his eyes wander, why his silence grows heavier by the day. Freud saw this pattern in his patients again and again. He described women who believed they were saving their relationships by caring more, doing more, controlling more. At first, their men seemed grateful. Who would complain about endless comfort? But beneath the surface, irritation grew. Distance widened. A restless search for fire stirred elsewhere. Because, as Freud put it bluntly, a man cannot desire what treats him like a boy. Think of the woman who cooks, cleans, organizes, and whispers to herself, "He will see how much I do for him." Instead, he comes home later, talks less, smiles rarely. Not because she failed, but because she succeeded too completely. She erased the friction where desire once lived. Or the woman who bends her schedule to match his, cancels her plans to be always available, answers every message before it finishes sending. At first, he feels flattered. Soon, he feels nothing at all, because there is no mystery left to seek, no space left to cross. The chase has vanished, and with it, his pulse. And many of you know this wound firsthand. You gave more and more, only to feel him slip further away. You silenced yourself to keep peace, only to feel invisible. You made yourself indispensable, only to feel replaceable. You told yourself that patience was proof of love, but inside you wondered, why does my giving make him colder? Freud warned that what looks like strength often conceals a repetition of the past. Many women unconsciously recreate the role of the mother, hoping this time they will not be abandoned. They believe care will buy security, but what it buys instead is resentment. The unconscious does not reward mothering with passion, it punishes it with distance. And yet, there are women who step out of this pattern. Rare, steady, quietly awake, they refuse the old script. They do not believe that more sacrifice equals more love. They know what most never dare to know, that desire lives not in overgiving, but in restraint, not in mothering, but in mystery, not in replacing his struggle, but in allowing it. These women do not destroy the men they love by suffocating them with devotion. They guard polarity. They preserve the space where desire can breathe. They hold their ground without apology. And that is why their relationships feel alive, magnetic, unbreakable. So what exactly do they avoid? What mistakes do they never allow themselves to make, even when the world insists that this is what a good woman should do? Freud was precise in his language. He did not speak of these dynamics as casual habits or flaws of personality. He classified them as unconscious mechanisms, clinical markers of what he called a collapse of libido under the weight of care. In his case notes, he wrote of women who seemed devoted, loyal, endlessly attentive. To the outside eye, their behavior looked admirable, even virtuous, but Freud considered it dangerous. He saw these acts not as signs of strength, but as symptoms of inverted desire. What is inverted desire? It is when the very energy that once ignited attraction begins to fold back on itself. Instead of fueling polarity, it collapses into sameness. Instead of sustaining passion, it transforms into dependence. Freud observed that women caught in this cycle often repeated the same behaviors unconsciously: caretaking, sacrifice, constant availability, self-forgetting. To them, these acts felt natural, even necessary, but clinically, he saw them as indicators of desire's decline. He described these symptoms with the detached tone of a physician: excessive caretaking, the unconscious substitution of maternal instinct for erotic tension; chronic sacrifice, the slow erosion of identity in exchange for imagined security; persistent availability, the loss of distance required for pursuit and attraction; progressive self-forgetting, the extinguishing of instinct and vitality which inevitably corrodes intimacy. Each of these, Freud argued, is not a conscious choice. No woman wakes up and decides to kill desire. Instead, they are unconscious repetitions, patterns carried forward from childhood, from culture, from invisible contracts that whisper, "To be loved, you must give yourself away." This is why Freud called them symptoms rather than traits, because they do not belong to the woman's essence. They belong to the machinery of her unconscious, repeating until attraction collapses, repeating until love suffocates. And here lies the paradox. Society often praises these symptoms. A woman who sacrifices is called selfless. A woman who is always available is called loyal. A woman who erases herself is called devoted. But in the clinical eye, these are not virtues. They are warning signs. They are markers of libido in decline, signals of passion's quiet death. Spiritually awake women refuse these repetitions. To the ordinary eye, their restraint may appear cold, distant, even selfish, but Freud would argue the opposite. Their refusal is not a defect. It is the only way love survives, because without distance, without boundaries, without preserved instinct, the unconscious collapses into repetition, and repetition destroys desire. So let us name them clearly. Here are the 6 hidden markers, the 6 things a spiritually awake woman never does for a man. 1. Never becomes his mother. He thinks your care is proof of love, but devotion, when it crosses a hidden line, no longer feeds him. It weakens him. Freud warned that the libido, the vital energy of desire, cannot survive when its polarity is collapsed. A man who is mothered stops being a man. He becomes a child in a woman's arms, and children are not desired. Picture this. He comes home exhausted. You anticipate his every need before he speaks. The meal is waiting. The clothes are folded. The problem at work already solved with your advice. You believe you are saving him. But in his eyes, something shifts. He feels not the pulse of desire, but the dull weight of dependency. The more you give, the less he rises. The more you soothe, the less he hunts. And soon, the man you wanted to love stands before you smaller, weaker, until he looks at you with the eyes of a son, not a lover. Freud saw this collapse again and again in his patients. Women, trying to protect love, turned themselves into caretakers, and instead of passion, they bred resentment, because a man cannot both desire and regress. A spiritually awake woman refuses the mother's crown because she knows it shrinks the man she loves. 2. Never overgives. She thinks her endless giving will keep him close. She believes that if she empties herself, he will be full of love. But Freud warned of a darker truth. Overgiving does not nourish desire, it castrates it. The libido cannot thrive where one partner dissolves into sacrifice. Picture this. She cancels her plans for the 3rd time in a week, just to be there in case he needs something. She rushes from her own commitments to fix his smallest inconvenience. Her phone is always in her hand, ready to answer before it rings. At first, he takes it as proof of loyalty, but soon, something curdles. He feels not admiration, but suffocation. He starts to withdraw, not because she failed him, but because she erased the edge that once made him reach for her. Freud called this the collapse of polarity. When one person gives too much, the other unconsciously withdraws. What costs her everything costs him nothing, and what costs him nothing, he cannot value. Think of how many times women mistake exhaustion for devotion. They believe, if I do more, he will see my worth. But the opposite happens. The more she sacrifices, the less he notices. Until she wakes one day and realizes that her exhaustion has become invisible, and so has she. That is why the woman who protects her desire never lets devotion become blind sacrifice. She knows that desire breathes only when she still has something left for herself. 3. Never plays always available. Desire is not born from convenience, it is born from risk. Freud noted that the libido feeds on anticipation, the gap between wanting and having. But when a woman removes all uncertainty, when she is permanently within reach, the fire cools. The man no longer feels like a hunter, he feels like a prisoner of predictability. Picture this, he tells her vaguely, "Maybe I'll call you this weekend." She rearranges her entire schedule just in case, waiting by the phone. Saturday comes, and he feels no urgency to call, because she is already waiting. The thrill of pursuit vanishes, not because he chose another woman, but because she erased the chase before it began. Freud described this collapse as a kind of psychic anesthesia. Without challenge, libido grows numb. What was once electric becomes flat, like food served before appetite has even formed. Think of the women who pride themselves on being endlessly accommodating. They believe their constant readiness will make them unforgettable. Instead, they become invisible because what is guaranteed ceases to feel alive. And so the woman who guards passion never removes uncertainty. She lets him move toward her, knowing this is how desire stays alive. 4. Never dulls her mystery. Desire does not thrive on what is fully explained. Freud wrote that the unconscious keeps its power through censorship, by holding something back, by leaving part of the story in shadow. When a woman reveals everything, when she turns her soul into a glass house, she may feel honest, but she also kills the magnetism of mystery. Picture this. He asks her, "What are you thinking?" And she floods him with every detail, her worries, her plans, the memory from childhood that surfaced this morning. Nothing is left unsaid. At first, he feels close, almost flattered by her openness, but soon he feels strangely detached, because there is nothing to approach, nothing to reach toward, nothing to imagine. Every corner is lit, and the shadows where desire once lived are gone. Freud noted that too much exposure creates psychic fatigue. What is completely available to the conscious mind loses its charge in the unconscious. Desire needs boundaries, silence, the unspoken, not manipulation, but depth that is not exhausted in daylight. Think of the women who try to prove intimacy by constant confession. They think, if I show him every part of me, he will never leave. Instead, he stops leaning closer because there is no mystery left to pursue. It is for this very reason the awakened woman keeps part of herself in shadow, because what is partly hidden is what keeps him coming closer. 5. Never replaces his struggle. Many women believe rescuing a man will deepen love. They think, if I fight his battles, he will never leave me. Freud called this the repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to replay an old script, hoping this time the ending will change. But when a woman takes his struggle, she does not save him, she cripples him. A man who never wrestles with his own failures cannot stand as a man. Picture this, he forgets an important deadline. Instead of letting him face the consequences, she stays up all night finishing the work, handing it to him in the morning. At first, he thanks her. Later, he grows restless, even hostile. Deep down, he knows he did not earn the victory. She stole his failure, and with it, the dignity of overcoming. Freud observed this collapse in countless patients, women who carried burdens that were never theirs, only to be abandoned by the men they thought they were saving. Because protection, when misplaced, breeds not gratitude, but resentment. For a spiritually awake woman, his battles are never hers to steal. She allows him to stumble, to rise, to become, knowing that love cannot survive when his spine is replaced by her sacrifice. 6. Never forgets her own fire. A woman can lose a man long before he leaves her, the moment she loses herself. Freud wrote that suppressed instincts do not disappear, they turn inward, corroding health and intimacy alike. When a woman abandons her own passions, her rituals, her flame, she does not become more lovable, she becomes invisible, and no man truly desires what he can no longer see. Picture this, she once painted through the night, laughed loudly with friends, carried herself with a radiance that filled every room. Slowly, she traded it all for errands, chores, and waiting by the door. At first, he admired her devotion. Later, he stopped noticing her at all, not because he stopped loving, but because the fire that drew him had gone out. Freud warned that love without instinct becomes hollow. A woman who erases her own vitality does not protect her relationship. She drains it. Her silence becomes absence. Her sacrifice becomes emptiness. This is why the awakened woman guards her inner flame. She tends to her passions, her friendships, her spirit, knowing that when her fire burns, both she and the man beside her remain alive with desire. These 6 are not small gestures. They are the quiet lines that separate love from resentment, desire from decay. A spiritually awake woman never crosses them because she knows that protecting polarity is what protects love itself. Now tell me, would you want a separate video on the other side of the story, on the hidden mistakes men make that quietly ruin women? If you do, write in the comments, yes, I want to know what destroys women. But before we go there, let us return to you, because knowing these 6 is not enough. The question is, how do you become the woman who never makes them? How do you train yourself to move differently, to guard your fire, and to keep desire alive? Freud insisted that awareness alone changes nothing. The unconscious repeats until you disrupt it with new choices. To become the woman who never mothers, never overgives, never extinguishes her flame, you must practice differently. Here are 4 steps that may sound dangerous, but they are the very steps that keep love alive. 1. Practice withholding instead of giving. Do not rush to fill every silence, every need, every gap. Let absence breathe. Freud taught that desire requires censorship, something left unsaid, undone, unrevealed. Start small. Leave one message unanswered until tomorrow, one detail of your life unspoken, one evening untouched by caretaking. Watch how he leans forward instead of leaning away. 2. Trade sacrifice for selfish rituals. Freud warned that suppressed instincts corrode the self. Replace one act of blind sacrifice with one selfish ritual that feeds you: a walk alone, a project only yours, a pleasure not explained. Selfishness, in this sense, is not cruelty, it is oxygen, and oxygen is what keeps your fire burning. 3. Let him carry his weight. The compulsion to rescue repeats until you break it. Stop carrying what was never yours. If he forgets, let him face the consequence. If he fails, let him rise from the failure. Freud believed that strength is forged only in conflict, and when you steal the conflict, you steal the man. 4. Guard the shadow. Do not turn your life into an open window. Keep a room of your soul unlit, a passion he cannot fully enter, a dream he must ask about but cannot entirely hold. Freud called this the unconscious reserve, the place that keeps desire alive. Protect it, and you protect the mystery that drew him in the first place. These are not punishments. They are permissions, permissions to breathe, to hold, to let be. And when you live this way, you do not lose men. You reveal which men were strong enough to stand beside you. But here is the danger Freud saw. If these steps are ignored, devotion mutates. What begins as care turns into harm. What looks like loyalty becomes sabotage. This is what he called good that harms, kindness that weakens, love that infantilizes, sacrifice that erases. A woman who refuses to change does not only silence her own fire, she quietly cripples the men around her. The partner she mothers forgets how to stand. The son she shields learns to fear the world. The brother she overprotects never grows his strength. Even the father she manages loses his authority. This is the paradox. What feels noble can secretly destroy, and only the woman who dares to practice differently protects not just herself, but the men she loves. Freud believed the unconscious repeats until we dare to break it. What was once mothering, overgiving, rescuing, all of it can end the moment you choose differently. And in that moment, love stops being a cycle of ruin and becomes a field of desire again. A spiritually awake woman does not fight against men, nor does she smother them with devotion. She does something rarer, braver. She allows them to be. She guards her fire, she protects the mystery, she leaves space for the hunt, and in doing so, she does not lose love. She reveals its true shape. Remember this: desire is not destroyed by distance, it is destroyed by suffocation. Love does not die because you hold your ground. It dies because you give yourself away completely. So write it in the comments. From today, I never, and finish the sentence with what you refuse to repeat. Let your words become a vow to yourself. If this spoke to you, share it, subscribe, and send it to a friend who must hear these truths. Because every woman who dares to awaken does more than save her own relationship. She protects the men she loves, and she keeps the fire of desire alive for all women. We'll meet again in the next video. Until then, guard your flame, softly, fiercely, endlessly.